everybody, I'm here with your astrology headlines for the month of November 2025. I was trying to get this up a little earlier, but wasn't feeling great on the weekend, so it's up today. Hopefully that's soon enough. We have a lot going on in November. Let me tell you, lots and lots of stuff. If you like this kind of stuff, if you like the astrology, I do have on my website a free newsletter I send out at the beginning of every month with all of these dates and all of these things written out so that you can read it and refer back to it. So you can check it out on, it's linked on my website. So if you go to my website, you can sign up for the newsletter for free. If you like these kind of things and you want even more detailed astrology, I do have on my Patreon a weekly astrology report where I go into all the aspects and things going on for the week. So if you like that, you can check that out there. So shameless plug over. Let's get on with what's going on this month. So we have a lot of stuff going on this month. So one of the big things is we have a Mercury retrograde going on. And you know, Mercury retrogrades happen 3 times a year. They're not something to freak out about, but they are something I think that we tend to notice more than maybe some of the other retrogrades, because it does affect things like travel and communication. It happens, like I said, 3 times a year for about 3 weeks each time. And so we do tend to notice them. And so just be aware we have Mercury retrograde this month, and you might already be feeling it, but we are starting that at the end of this week. We have a lot of this, the energy this month is about reviewing things. It is a lot about looking back at things, tying up loose ends. I'm going to talk about that as we get into it, but it is also a very emotional month too. We have a lot of planets in water signs. Like throughout the year, we've had a lot of fire and air going on with, especially with the outer planets, but now we're kind of back to more water and earth stuff. And that tends to make people a little more emotional, a little more melancholy, but also a little more grounded in some ways too. So there is a lot of sort of like reviewing and reflecting, especially on the past year, I would say is some of the big themes coming up this month. So let's get into it. Let's get started. There is a lot. Like I have a full page of things going on this month. So the first is today, November 4th. As I'm recording this, we have Mars going into the sign of Sagittarius. So Mars is your will, it's your action, it's also anger, how we express anger. And Mars, you know, is going to Sagittarius, which makes it a little more open as opposed to when it was in Scorpio for the past 2 months, which is a little bit more of like sniper revenge, kind of behind the scenes kind of energy. When it's Sagittarius, it is more forward. Mars and Sagittarius can be good for things like if you're going on an adventure, if you're taking on some new things. Mars and Sagittarius can be really adventurous, but it can also be running into things without thinking. I often think of it in tarot as like the Knight of Wands, you know, sometimes just rushing into things without really thinking it through. Also, you know, Sagittarius is a sign that is about sort of the big picture thinking. So things like politics, philosophy, religion. And Mars and Sagittarius can be, like Sagittarius is usually fairly open-minded, but with Mars and Sagittarius, sometimes we get very dogmatic about our beliefs and we're not willing to compromise, or we want to try to like force people to see our point of view. And so that's something I think to watch for in ourselves and others over the next couple of months, because Mars spends about 2 months or so in a sign. Then on November 5th, we have our full moon. It is at 13 degrees of Taurus. This particular full moon isn't really making a lot of aspects with other planets. That's because most of the planets right now are either at the beginning or end of a sign, and you have that full moon right in the middle at like 13 degrees. And so this is a full moon where it is very much about the energies of that full moon. So we have the sun in Scorpio right now, and then we have the moon in the opposite sign of Taurus. And so our focus right now with that Scorpio kind of season is very much on kind of, you know, the internal world and the dark and the mysterious, and on spirituality, also on things like psychology, the occult, sexuality. Like it is the spooky time of year. And then the full moon comes along to say, hey, you still live in a body. You still have to deal with the material realm. And to remember to be here on this earth, enjoy things, enjoy being in this world. It also asks us to, you know, kind of look at the practical side of things. Like how do we take the knowledge and things we've uncovered during this time and put it into practical use? So very strong energy there. We also, though, on this day have Mars, who's just moved into Sagittarius. opposite with Uranus and sextiling Pluto. So it's reacting with the outer planets. So there could be some sudden events that come up. Uranus is often about chaos, and especially when it's opposite Mars, there can be like sudden accidents. There can be, especially I'm thinking more on the world stage, sudden events that shock us in some way. There is a sextile with Pluto though, and sextiles are helpful. So I think it's saying like whatever it is that happens, or whatever shocks or surprising things happen, to roll with them and try to integrate them into the larger picture, or integrate them into our transformation. So it's telling us to go to, kind of take the things that are coming up in stride, even if those things are sometimes shocking or upsetting at times too. So I sort of wonder, what is kind of coming up for this full moon. In our own lives, we may not have a lot of that kind of drama because the outer planets tend to not affect us directly as much, depending on our chart. But, just don't take any big giant risks, I would say. Don't do anything too risky around the full moon. Then on November 6th, we have Venus moving into the sign of Scorpio. So Venus is love and beauty, and she's not the most comfortable in the sign of Scorpio. Scorpio is ruled by Pluto and Mars. She's not the happiest here, but I do think of Venus in Scorpio as very goth girl kind of energy. So this is, the aesthetic of like the spooky, the dark, the mysterious, darker colors. It's also in our love life. We want to get to the bottom of things. We want to talk about deeper issues. We're not comfortable just looking at things on the surface. And sometimes that can bring up issues that are, a little more difficult, but ultimately give us a little more depth about things. So, if you're in a good relationship, this, isn't an issue. But if there's problems, it's actually a good time to talk about those problems and to, kind of work through those things. Venus in Scorpio, though, can be a little bit jealous, which is something to watch for. But she does like exploring the depths of things. And it can be a great time for like exploring your sexuality as well, because Scorpio is a very sexy sign. So she's going to be spending the rest of the month until November 30th in that sign of Scorpio. On November 7th, we have Uranus retrograding back into the sign of Taurus, which is one of the bigger headlines of the month. So Uranus is one of those planets that moves very slowly. It's an outer planet. He was in Taurus from 2018 until earlier this year, until about July 1st, I think it was. And so he spends about 8 years in a sign. And Uranus is about technology. It's about sudden change. And so over those years, we saw a lot of things around cryptocurrency because Taurus rules money. So we saw a lot of changes in technology around money. There were also changes in technology around food. Things like the fake meats became really popular. Also, there are changes, in agriculture, the environment, the electric car became more of a thing. So a lot of changes in technology that have to do with the earth, the environment, food, money. When he moved into Gemini, Uranus in Gemini is very much about communication. So we saw an uptick in things like AI, drones, self-driving cars, things like that. And now that was a little preview, and now he's stepping back into Taurus, and he's going to be there until I think the end of February or so. So this is just a little step back into Taurus to wrap some things up. So there may be some projects and things that, you started back in 2018 that kind of need to be wrapped up before you move forward again. So this is very much an energy of sort of looking back, reflecting on things. And I do expect, because Uranus is an outer planet and it's more about what we see in the wider world rather than, it can affect if it's hitting our personal chart. But I think there's going to be issues around money and labor and food that we're going to see some sudden changes in, or some unusual events around over the next few months. On November 9th, we have our Mercury retrograde starting. This starts at 6 degrees of Sagittarius. So if you have a lot of Sagittarius placements, or you have a lot of planets around 6 degrees anywhere in the chart, it's probably going to affect you more than others. Like Mercury retrograde is one of those things, like I said, it happens 3 times a year. And sometimes we notice it and it's like, oh my God, this Mercury retrograde hit me so hard. And other times we barely notice it. But it really depends how it hits your personal chart. So Mercury is travel and communication. And when he goes retrograde, we have things like travel delays, miscommunications, we lose things. It's it's definitely those kind of things go awry. Things may break down. With it being in Sagittarius, I really expect there to be things around long distance travel. So things like flights, maybe even cruise ships, but I'm thinking more flights, that there's going to be, some kind of delays and things going on with airlines over the next few weeks. I also, because it's around Sagittarius, is things like the law. It's also politics, religion. It's also philosophy, things like that. There could be misunderstandings, miscommunications, things that, they didn't, maybe some people didn't want to be revealed get leaked. So we may see a lot of things getting leaked, especially about things that have happened before, because retrogrades look backwards. And so things that have happened over the past month, there may be information that comes to light about those things. We may hear like, oh, this happened last month. Well, this is what was really going on behind the scenes, or this is what this person really said. There may be, I find Mercury retrograde reveals secrets about things too, so we may see some of that coming out over the next few weeks, particularly around issues around justice. And then when he moves back into Scorpio, there may be issues of things that are taboo around sex scandals, that kind of thing. So Mercury retrogrades aren't all bad. They can reveal things to us. Mercury retrogrades also are a good time to reflect on things, especially as we get towards the end of the year, right? To reflect back on how we did things. We do still have 2 months in the year. So it's a good time to revise things, to edit things, to finish things up. All good for those kind of things. Mercury in Sagittarius, just generally speaking, even when it's going forward, does have the tendency of blurting things out. Those with Mercury and Sagittarius can be very blunt. They can say things without thinking. And so Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius can make all of us that way. So watch what you're saying, think before you speak, but also if somebody says something really blunt or really like, whoa, did you just say that? Ask for clarity. And of course, with travel, as always, give yourself extra time, especially if you're doing long distance travel over the next few weeks. On November 11th, we have Jupiter retrograding back, going retrograde, and this is at 25 degrees of Cancer. Again, this is a slower moving planet, so you may not feel this as much as, Mercury or Venus or Mars. But if you have Cancer placements, particularly around that 25 degrees, you might feel this more than others. And Jupiter retrograde is going to add that sense of slowness, because when Jupiter is moving forward, we feel like there's opportunities, we feel like luck is coming our way, things are flowing easily. When he goes retrograde, it's like things are still happening. They're just not happening as fast. They're just not happening as quickly as we like them to. And so there is a sense overall this month of things slowing down. And that's an opportunity to take a break, right? Like that's an opportunity, it can be frustrating, but it's an opportunity for all of us to slow down. Jupiter in Cancer is really about expanding things around our home and our family. In the wider world, it can also be things about the homeland or protectionism. And so I feel like there may be a walking back of some of those things, or that people are, kind of reflecting and saying, hey, did we go too far in certain things in these areas? So we'll see what kind of happens with that over the next couple of months. Then on November 16th and 17th, we have a lovely water trine going on. So we have the Sun in Scorpio making a trine with Jupiter in Cancer and Saturn in Pisces. So all three of the water signs are activated by this grand trine, which is very easy and flowing. And so there's a sense of flow and optimism, even within the restrictions that we have, because Saturn's restrictions, and particularly in Pisces, it can make us feel a little melancholy, a little down about things. But we have Jupiter in Cancer and we have Sun in Scorpio, and they're all working together. And I think they're all asking us to think about how we can change things for the better, because Jupiter wants us to expand. The Sun's putting our focus on the deeper issues, being in Scorpio, and then it's saying, okay, yes, there are problems and troubles going on. How do we make things better? There's a sense of like there is some optimism or some hope, or we can look to the future. So I am really looking forward to that. I think those 2 days will be quite good. On November 18th, we have Mercury retrograding backwards into Scorpio. So he started at 6 degrees of Sagittarius, and now he's going to be moving backwards into the sign of Scorpio. So he's going to be reviewing some of the things that have happened in October. And again, this is where some scandals may come out, particularly around issues like sex or the occult, or like sort of those more taboo subjects or psychology, secrets, things that people didn't want to know. This is a time when some of those things may come out. So if you have secrets, just be aware of that, but also you may find some things out. It's really looking at things on a deeper level and reviewing things, and we're going to be doing that for the next couple of weeks. So that's a heads up about that. On November 19th, we have a new moon. This is going to be at 28 degrees of Scorpio. So new moons are a good time to set intentions for the next lunar cycle. And so in Scorpio, that rules things like long-term finances, anything around sexuality, spirituality, if you're looking at developing your psychic gifts, if you're looking to do some therapy, some shadow work, this is a really great time for that. Exploring sexuality, any of those kind of taboo topics, those are all Scorpio topics, and this is a really good time to set some intentions in that area. Again, because we have that nice water trine, it's actually a really lovely full moon where you can set some really powerful intentions and do some really great magical work at this time. On November 20th, we have Uranus making an exact sextile with Neptune. Now, Uranus and Neptune are going to be sextile with each other. They're going to be 60 degrees apart or so for a while, for the next couple of years, and they have been for a while. But this is a day, one of the days it goes exact. And so this energy is particularly potent around this time. So we have Uranus, who's now just retrograded back into Taurus, and he wants to make changes. He wants to do things differently. And then we have Neptune, which is all about our ideals, our collective ideals. And it's in Pisces, which is about empathy and sympathy. And so I think that there's going to be a lot of talk again about changes we can make, particularly to things like money, food, the day-to-day, and how we can make that fairer and more just in the world. And I know it doesn't really feel like that with the politics that are going on right now, but I feel like there's a really strong energy of wanting things to be better for the collective around this time. I think as well, Neptune in Pisces has also kind of been about AI to a certain extent, dreams, art, that kind of thing. And how do we, I feel like there's going to be discussions about AI and how we can make, what's the word I'm looking for? I feel like, as we know, AI scrapes things from the internet. So it's not paying artists, it's not paying authors, it's not paying scientists. It just scrapes things. And I wonder if there's push around making some practical changes to compensate people or to make it clearer when things are AI. I feel like there's going to be some things around that at this time. On November 21st, we have the sun moving into the sign of Sagittarius, as it does at this time of year every year. The sun is what we kind of focus on, what we're paying attention to. We kind of go from that more internal, spooky, dark kind of season to Sagittarius is like, we want to go out and have fun. We want to explore things. We have like sort of big ideas for the year ahead. This is like holiday party time. It's good to go out and have fun, enjoy ourselves. And we're kind of thinking in big, broad terms about what we might want for the next year. On November 22nd, in November 22nd and the 26th, we have Mercury on the 22nd making a grand trine with that Jupiter and Saturn placement. And then on the 26th, we have Venus making a grand trine with Jupiter and Saturn again. So again, there are this sort of flow with a lot of watery energy. I think that with Mercury earlier in that week on the 22nd, making that grand trine, I think we're going to have a lot of talk and discussion about sort of like how we're feeling about things. There's going to be reviewing things. I feel like a lot of things from the past are going to be coming up into the public consciousness. I'm going to be talking about, there's something that gets revealed around this time, I really strongly feel, that is going to affect things and change things. So watch what kind of happens there. And then I have on the 26th, Venus making a trine. And that's a really lovely opportunity there as well. This is a good day for an artistic project. This is a great time for a party. There is just a sense of like very lovely energy going on at this time that makes us optimistic, but also sort of grounded in reality too. We're wanting to make things beautiful and make things better for people. On November 27th, we have Saturn going direct after being in retrograde for a few months at 25 degrees of Pisces. So if you have a lot of Pisces placements or you have planets around 25 degrees. You're probably going to feel this one. Saturn going direct says, okay, you need to get things done. You need to put your house in order. What are the rules here? You know, when we're younger, we don't always like rules, but the thing is, without rules, there's chaos, right? And so there's sort of like a cracking down in some ways of rules, or putting parameters on things, or stopping things. So there's a sense of like, okay, it's time to put things in order. So this is a good time to get things organized, or to start to get things organized. It's also a good time to, if you are working kind of within constraints of some kind, to get other people on board to help them, you know, to get organized so that they can work with you as well. On November 29th, this is when Mercury retrograde ends. It ends at 20 degrees of Scorpio. So, you know, I usually find the beginning and end to be kind of the more disruptive times. And then after that, things tend to move forward. So, you know, if you, the Mercury retrograde after this, things should be smoother, especially when it comes to travel, with communication, all of that. We're still Mercury in Scorpio, which is sort of internally focused, but there definitely things feel like they're moving forward again. And then on November 30th, we have Venus moving into the sign of Sagittarius. So after her time being a goth girl in Scorpio, she's going into Sagittarius, where she wants to just like, she wants to have fun. She wants to party for December. She wants to go on adventures. She wants to, you know, do something she hasn't done before. This is also a good time to travel, especially if you're traveling overseas. The retrograde's over. Venus likes to, you know, in Sagittarius likes to explore new things, new ideas. She also likes to be flirted with. Like, this is just like a fun energy. So I really feel like this month of November is one of a lot of reflection. It's about old stuff sort of coming up to be dealt with. And also our feelings are kind of becoming to the fore. Like, we're really feeling things on a deeper level, especially with a lot of the water trines that are coming up with that Saturn and Jupiter. And so it's going to be an interesting month. It's a busy month in some ways astrologically, but I feel like it's a month where we're asked to slow down, we're asked to reflect, we're asked to feel our feelings, and we're really asked to dream about what it is we want for the future, even if things look difficult right now. It's sort of like looking past all of those things that are in front of us to go, where is it that we want to go? What's the dream, and how do we get there? So that's what I'm seeing for the month of November. Again, if you want more detailed stuff, I do have, like I said, weekly detailed astrology on my Patreon. I have the free newsletter if you want all this stuff written down where you can see it. So, you know, if you, and I do have astrology readings as well in my Etsy shop if you're interested in that. Again, thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you guys, and I really appreciate you patrons for supporting me. It helps me so much. And as always, I'm sending you so much peace and love and rock.